Hello everyone, welcome along to the top 5 talking points from the Emilia Romagna, I'm going to say Romagna Grand Prix. Of course, it was Imola. What a great race we had. What a great weekend. It was a 3-long-week wait since the last race. We thought we were going to have a good season. And well, we certainly had a good second race, didn't we? So, yes, as always, about an hour or two after the race, we're going to go live and talk about the top 5-ish talking points from the race. And as last time, I am joined by Rwaggy. Here he is, down below.
Hi, guys.
What a friendly wave that was. What a friendly wave and a friendly guy. The friendly beard, everything about it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I've been practicing.
Been rehearsing in the mirror, your nice wave.
That one. This mirror right here.
Anyway, hello chat. Welcome along to this one. Thank you, Bailey, for joining as a mod. Shots on iPhone is in as well. Mercrus63, Isaac, Dylan, Matteo, A Person, GFHSHJH, Stefan, Gwilym, and Yeet Games. Welcome along to this one, guys. Anyway, should we get straight on into it then? I mean, as I said, what a race that was. I thoroughly enjoyed that. We basically put together some top 5 talking points, and then after that we'll get into our driver of the day, which we've each individually chosen one, and then after that we'll get into our honourable and dishonourable mentions in terms of drivers. So let's jump straight on in then with the very first talking point, which I am going to seamlessly bring up now. There we go. We got there in the end. Inconsistent track limits in qualifying is the talking point. Now, we had a great qualifying, didn't we, yesterday? Very, very close, actually. I think it was only half a second covered, like the top 10 at one point or something like that. It was incredibly close, much closer than I expected to see. But of course, we had the big moments of Norris losing his lap. He was on for a P3. In fact, he did a lap that was good enough for P3, but went, I'm going to say, like 2 centimetres over the white line. Very, very marginal. And then in other places, we were seeing cars go over the white line and completely getting away with it. So to me, that felt a little bit inconsistent. Of course, it was a great shame to Norris to lose his lap. Of course, as well, I will say that, you know, the rules were set up clearly before the weekend, so it's not like they've been inconsistent in a single corner. The rules were said at, it was turn 9, Piratella, where they set the rule as a white line. They said right at the start of the weekend, when you go over that, you're going to lose your lap. So it was consistent in that way, but inconsistent corner to corner. So my question to you guys and to Rwaggy is do we need some more consistency for these track limits? I mean, do we just say the white line is the edge of the track? Every corner, every track, doesn't matter. The white line is the edge. Or do we say edge of the curb is the limit, every track, every corner? Or do we keep it inconsistent? I mean, obviously at the moment they do it on a case-by-case basis. Some corners they go, well, hey, you can actually gain an advantage there by going off and you don't need to go off. Other corners they somehow decide that you can't gain an advantage by going off, but to me, they wouldn't be out there if it wasn't faster. Yeah, I mean, what do we think, guys? Put it down in chat. We'll cover some of your messages just after that, but I'm going to throw it to Rwaggy first. What do you think, Rwaggy? Do you think we should be more consistent, or are you happy with the system the way it is?
I think you got to treat this as very much like you would with any sort of management/parental kind of situation. You've got to be consistent, and it's across all of it. It's got to be fair, and to be fair, you have to have that consistency. So for me, yeah, absolutely, you need that very firm. If you cross the white line, I don't care if it's by millimeters or by inches or whatever, that's invalidated. That's off the bar. I think it's the only way you can make it. You can avoid the drama. I mean, just look at Bahrain, for example. We've not got that same situation now with Emilia, right? It was very clear cut. Yes, you went past it. Yes, you've been given your time, got deleted. Don't get me wrong, it's sad AF. I really wish that Norris actually managed to secure that qualifying, because it was fantastic. Realistically, it didn't make any difference when it came to the actual GP, but you know, that ultimately still is good to see that they've got that consistency now. And I'm glad that it ended up the way that it did. Yes, he can improve on that for the next time. And I expect that next week, because we're back in Portsmouth, I believe next week, he's going to be, he will take that into consideration and use that as a learning curve.
So you basically think we have got consistency now? Because to me, the inconsistency is corner to corner. Is that some corners they go, hey, white line is strict. Other corners they go, oh, you're allowed on the curb. Other corners they go, we don't even care on that corner.
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes down to it, doesn't it? Because there's got to be some sort of leniency. There's got to be some sort of thought when it comes down to it. Yeah, I mean, the ones that they labelled out very clearly, if you go past this line, you're going to get penalised for it. fair play. I mean, Emilia is a very tight track in general anyway, especially for an F1 car, which is carrying a hell of a lot of speed through a lot of these really awkward corners. And some of them, it doesn't actually make sense for you to carry too much speed because you will end up just losing way more time and potentially even causing a crash for yourself, actually. And I think alongside that, you need a relatively safe amount. So I wouldn't necessarily want them to like push themselves too hard and have to try and keep within like track limits because it's just going to be too risky in my opinion. But I think what they've done so far this weekend, I think was probably the best show that they've had so far when it comes to track limits and actually keeping it fair, shall we say.
I think definitely fair. As I said, the start of the weekend, they said, "Hey, this is the line we're going to draw," and they stuck to that. They disallowed Norris's lap, and they even gave a penalty out in the race. Was it Tsunoda? I think maybe got a penalty in the race for multiple infringements. To me, though, it is just weird because it was Piratella turn 9 where they were very straight white line, and it was Variante Alta in 14-15 the chicane where they said the curb was the limit, and I just didn't understand the difference. Because both corners you could go wide and gain an advantage. Both corners, you could just carry a bit more speed through the corner and run off the track and kind of use the curb and whatever else. I just didn't really know why they drew the line as the white line on one and the curb as the other. And I just feel like to some extent this alienates like the new viewer. Coming into the race, seeing especially in qualifying when it's such a high profile thing. Norris losing his epic P3 lap. And then back in P6 or 7, wherever it was he qualified. It's just kind of like, it almost takes the buzz off it a little bit. That said, you have to draw the line somewhere. So, obviously you can't have them completely going off. To me, it comes down to the tracks, first and foremost. The tracks, need to have some sort of limit. By the way, I love Imola's limits in general. Will probably be one of my talking points at future races, but I just love that the grass and the gravel is so close so that is your defining limit, and if you go off it you're having a spin or you're in the wall, and it really punishes mistakes. I love that. Again, that's kind of a whole separate talking point. Obviously some corners that doesn't happen, but I do think it's down to the track to have certain curbs or a wall even, or I don't know, just some sort of restriction that physically stops you going out there or wanting to go out there, and then the drivers will be going nowhere near it. Agreed. Where that doesn't exist or where that can't exist, or budget constraints, or Turkey last year was raced on pretty last minute. There's only so many changes they can make last minute. I just feel like they just need to draw the line somewhere. I'm happy for it to be the curb. A lot of other motorsports give it the curb. They just say the curb is part of the track, run the whole curb. I'm happy to do that. I just think it needs to be consistent track to track, because you just know that the casuals tuning in and going, "Oh, why has he lost his lap?" Yeah, I saw another driver go off, because actually in qualifying they showed a slow-mo of a driver going off at the chicane and still maintaining his lap. So they're making it very clear that it's okay in some places. And I just know that the casuals just finding that confusing and being like, why is this other person went off there? Why has he not lost it there? So many other sports have such clearly defined limits. I know the VAR stuff in football is a bit of a big talking point at the moment. But there is theoretically a clearly defined line for offside, and rugby has very clearly defined everything. And when you've got video stewards that can review it after the fact and decide based on millimetre accuracy, I just don't see why we have to be inconsistent. I just think it should be, every corner should be the same. Every track should be the same. It's, the curbs, whatever you decide. Or actually even, I take that back. Track to track, they could change for me. One track, it could be the white line, another track, it could be the curbs. Ideally, it'd be the same track to track, but whatever. But I think it needs to be the same corner to corner on a track, because, again, it's more about the casual viewer. I mean, obviously, probably most people in the stream understood that it was some corners not others, and it was just that just is what it is. But F1 needs to appeal to new viewers, right? They can't just continue appealing to the old core, because ultimately we'll all die off one day, and then we have no viewers left. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with you, but I think at the same time, it comes down. A lot of the new viewership comes from the drivers themselves. A lot of Lando Norris, for example, he's brought in a whole new scene that we would have probably very much not heard of F1 or been involved in F1 because of, I'm talking Twitch specifically, or not necessarily cared about beforehand. And then when you bring those personalities on board, especially like I said, Lando. It just makes it so much better. But I think it really strikes an importance of the commentator. They're the ones who really need to make sure they understand it thoroughly, which, I like Grofty. I think he can be very good when it comes to, it makes it exciting. My issue is I think his knowledge could do with being a little bit better. I feel like he just kind of turns up expecting to be able to just shout all day, and then that's all it kind of comes down to. But that's a whole separate topic altogether. But,
it is indeed.
But yeah, just coming back to what you're saying, I think realistically, that when the drivers are the ones bringing in the viewership, as long as the commentators are giving the right level of information, I think that covers it. I think that ultimately should be what it comes down to. As long as it's detailed to the drivers, and then that is released out to the ones who do follow F1 religiously and very, very closely, I think then that shouldn't necessarily be a problem. I think that yes, I do agree with you though. I do think that there is an extent of that where it won't necessarily appeal to the newer viewers, but there's a lot within F1 that would also confuse the newer viewers. I think is more important. Understanding what ERS does and how it charges and stuff, I think is probably one area, but that's just an example of a range of different things that comes into it.
I do completely agree. I just think the more that you leave up to the commentators to explain, the more they're going to have to explain it over and over again, and you get a viewer queued in the middle of the race. And like you said, you leave yourself open to a commentator just not doing it, or not doing it often enough, not explaining it well enough. It just leaves it open to be confusing. But I do agree, the commentators, it's sort of their job, isn't it, to fill in these confusing parts for the new viewer. So, regardless of whether you change the rules or not, I do agree it's stuff sent up to commentators. An interesting comment from Gwilym says, I think they should do it like MotoGP with auto penalties for track limits. I'm not sure you read this, Raggy, but MotoGP basically have, I don't know exactly how the system works, to be honest, but they have a literally automated system. So when the bikes go over a certain point, so in MotoGP, Viñales, a prominent Yamaha rider in qualifying yesterday, lost both of his hot laps in the final qualifying session, so ended up not setting a lap at all. And the rule in MotoGP is if you touch the green, so there's like a curb, then there's like a AstroTurf type thing, and if you touch that green with even a tiny bit of your tyre, penalty, which I like, again, because it's a hard rule. But they've also got, I don't know how it works, they've got some technology that actually detects it, which to me, I think F1 definitely should have that. I know at some corners previously they have had something, haven't they, like that? But I mean, it's F1, right? I mean, it's they've got all the technology in the world. Why do they not have that on maybe not every corner, but certainly the corners that matter? And then it's very clear. It's to the millimeter. If your car goes beyond X point, that's it. Lap disallowed. And then there's no, but the stewards need to review it, and they could miss certain ones, and blah blah blah. So what do you think about the automated system, Raggy?
At least to be consistent. That's the main thing, and that's something I'm very big on when it comes to stuff like that. Doing the stewarding in the past, you have to be consistent across the board, and that's one of the main factors of that. Having that technology in there would absolutely make it consistent. And again, like you said, I completely agree with you. F1 is supposed to be the pinnacle of technology within motorsport. Why do we not have this level of technology within F1? You know what I mean? This is absolutely really sort of, I don't know, seems sus to me.
Yeah, because also you can get an immediate notification. Like, for example, if Lando's lap was cancelled before he even got to the start-finish line, we never would have, seen him up in P3. It would have come up, Lando Norris, lap cancelled, and I believe that's what happens in MotoGP. It says lap cancelled before they even get to the start-finish line. So it stops this thing of like, oh, he's in P3. Oh, no, he's not in P3. And although, okay, those moments are kind of part of sport, but it again just kind of simplifies the whole system. So I do think they should invest. I think they should be more consistent and invest in more kind of technology, I guess, to actually detect these things. But anyway, I think that kind of covers that point. We've probably talked about that for just about long enough. So my second talking point is, the title is, do we need a precise rule for leaving room? So of course, in lap 1 of the race, wet start, we saw Verstappen have an unbelievable start, go from P3 up to, alongside Hamilton for P1. Hamilton tried to hold it around the outside. I believe they were pretty much wheel to wheel, tyre to tyre, level into the corner. Verstappen just edged a tiny bit ahead and then sort of pushed Hamilton off. He bounced over the curbs, got a bit of damage, and had a great recovery drive, even from there, let alone what happened later on. For me, though, I really want to kind of talk about whether we draw a firm line, because at the moment the rule in F1 is really vague. It's like, oh, you need to leave room when they deserve some room, or like there isn't really like a set. This is the rule. I think they should set a rule. Again, technology, video reviews, stewards, etc., etc. There's lots there that you can easily just set a rule. I think it should be, as soon as you are level, as in front tyre is level with front tyre, you deserve some room. The second you are a tiny bit back from that, you don't deserve any room. Okay, coming into a braking zone, they deserve room anyway. I'm on about like taking your racing line. You can only take your racing line if you are even a tiny bit ahead of the front wheel of the other car. What do you think about that?
I think there's too many variables that make that possible. Obviously, we can only go with what we've got already, which is from a gaming perspective. I don't think there's a single game out there, sim or not, that has actually been able to accurately sort out an automated penalty system. And I think because of the variables that come within it, it makes it impossible to do. And I think it should always remain a human intervention situation. If you get what I mean. I'm basically saying that it's not possible, in my opinion, to make that work and actually be 100% accurate every time. I mean, the track limits is one thing because it's very clear cut. If you cross the line, then you're going to get a time deleted or a warning or penalty, whatever is required. When it comes to contact and stuff like the Hamilton-Verstappen situation, there's a lot of people are going to say, and there already is a debate on Twitter and other social media where they're saying that Verstappen should have given more room to Hamilton and that Verstappen pushed him off the track and whatnot. Whilst I agree that Verstappen did give him a really good squeeze to the edge of the circuit, at the same point, Verstappen had the priority in the corner. Hamilton shouldn't have tried to go around the outside through there. He tried it, fair play for him trying it, but ultimately what he ended up doing was already going to happen regardless, because if you follow his line, his trajectory, he was already going to run off the track anyway. Go on.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Verstappen did anything wrong. I think it was part of racing, especially in the wet in turn one. It is what it is. One part of what you just said there, though, stuck in my mind, where you said that Hamilton shouldn't have tried it. And to me, if he was only halfway alongside, like, yes, you don't try it. He was very much wheel to wheel with him. He was level with him on the apex of the corner. I believe Max put in a bit of power and just edged ahead of him, so that then he could then kind of squeeze him out and then obviously hit the curbs. But I mean, this is the issue: is that if you effectively promote, well, hey, you can just squeeze someone off. If you're on the inside, just squeeze them off. It doesn't matter. You have to draw a line somewhere whereby you're supposed to leave room. Otherwise, you would never try and move on the outside. And some of the greatest moves are moved on the outside, or wheel to wheel through Eau Rouge, or there's so many moves that we love. And I'm not saying that those already aren't happening, because obviously they're still going for it. Hamilton still went for it today, with the current rules. I don't know. I just feel like, again, F1 might benefit from being a bit more precise with the rule and being like, this is where you draw the line. It just takes some of the mystery out of it, and and then the debate moves to being, was he side by side? Okay, he was side by side here, but then he edged head here, and that becomes a debate. So I don't think you lose any of the debate. You still keep the drama of sport, I suppose. I just don't know. Yeah. I do agree. I think the human element is important so that you can review it, but then it's just so up for just a matter of opinion,
really.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
I think for me, it's all comes down to who's got the priority, and I have no issues with anybody going for that outside maneuver. But again, it's a high risk situation you put yourself into, and once you make the decision to go for the outside maneuver, like in Emilia Turn 1, for example, you are basically taking the T's and C's to say, well, actually, if this goes south, this is on me. You know what I mean? And like when he went off the track there and actually went over onto the curbs, what are they called? The bump curbs, whatever you want to call them. Once he hit them, immediately, the sausage curbs, there you go.
That's the
Once
one,
he hit them, immediately it was on him. And that's it, ultimately. If he'd have then gone into the side of Verstappen, that would have hands down been Hamilton's fault, regardless of whether Verstappen squeezed him to the very end. And I think, I like the idea of going around the other side if you can pull it off. And it makes for absolutely entertaining racing, because it is such a high-risk situation. I'm sure we're going to cover it off later with the Bottas-Russell situation.
We are.
But again, if Russell had pulled that off, that would have been phenomenal. But it didn't.
It is interesting because it leaves it up to who you're overtaking. Verstappen, that's almost never going to work. If he was side by side with Bottas, I would argue Bottas would have given him a bit more room, and he probably would have got through. I think, and that, again, that's all part of sport. Like, I don't want to sterilise sport down to just rules and regulations. It is all part of it. That some drivers are really aggressive, and that you're going to have to really put a move on them. Other drivers, that they're a bit more of a walkover because they'll just leave you plenty of room. Okay. I think we kind of established our points there. I think there's a slight disagreement, but all is fair. So there's a few comments. So they mentioned that the Hamilton and Albon incident at Austria last year, which, someone else as well mentioned in the comments that it was different because it wasn't lap 1, it wasn't in the wet, which is definitely true. But, they were side by side and Hamilton kind of squeezed them out and, there was a bit of contact and whatever else. But I do think there's already an existing kind of gentleman's agreement of once you're wheel to wheel or slightly ahead, you need to give them room. Because, I guess it's more of a physics thing than a gentleman's agreement. Because if you run into the side of someone who's ahead, you're just going to damage your car, lose your wing, whatever. It's not going to end well for you. However, if you're ahead, you can probably squeeze them out and they will probably back off. So I think it's probably more physics than a gentleman's agreement. But so I guess that kind of unwritten rule is already there. I guess my question was whether we should write it in the rule. And I don't know. What do you guys think? Okay, let's have a vote. Let's have a vote on this one. So the unwritten rule is already there. If you're ahead or around the outside, you get given room. If you're not ahead, you get squeezed out. That's the unwritten rule right now, based on physics, based on gentleman's agreement, whatever you want to call it. So I want you guys to vote on whether you think that should remain an unwritten rule or should be made a actual rule of, let's say, dead on side by side. You only deserve room around the outside if you are literally perfectly wheel to wheel or further ahead.
Perez room at the same corner.
Yeah, okay, so Built, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Built 2JZ Lexus says Vettel gave Perez room at the same corner. True, again, that's what it comes back down to driver, doesn't it? As it's certain drivers you can go after and some you can't. Thank you for the $4.99 though, my friend. So I don't know how we're going to vote on this. What word should we use? We can use a single word to vote.
Do a number. 1 if you believe it should be, 2 if you believe it shouldn't be. All the other way around.
It's not very intuitive numbers though. I don't love that.
It makes it clear cut.
Yeah,
do
okay.
44 if you think.
All right, let's do numbers. Let's go with Raggy's way. Right, if you think it should remain the same, put a number 1, just the digit number 1 in chat. If you think it should be changed to be an actual rule whereby you set certain limits, put a number 2 in chat. Do that right now, and I'll bring up our most used chat. Actually, I need to set it up, but do start voting now. It should still log all of your votes. So number 1, if you think it should stay the same. Number 2, if you think we should set a hard and fast rule for limits when you're trying to particularly go on the outside. Oh God.
Looks pretty unanimous to me. I don't think you even need the chat log there, mate.
There is a lot of ones. There is a lot of ones. But I'm going to put it out there and say people don't like change. That's what I'm going to...
No. Honestly, it just comes down to it being really clear that there's just too much ambiguity around it. There's too many variables around it that will factor into it. Like, what lap are you on? What are the conditions of the track? What tyres are you on? How much momentum are you carrying into the corner? Is there enough space on the track? That kind of thing. There's so many things that to ask a program to sort of simulate and go, actually, yeah, that's fair or whatever. I don't think it's just doable. I think they've done the right thing by having I think they're already doing the right thing. They have been doing the right thing for a long time of having a board of people on there and making a decision and having one person, take the facts of it all and then issue a penalty or not. I think they absolutely made the right call today. Taking all fanboy side of it, yes, I do like Verstappen over Hamilton as a driver. I think they're both incredibly closely matched in terms of skill. I genuinely have no idea who would be the better out of the two of them right now if you put them both in the same car. But I honestly don't care because what we're getting right now is pretty much the same thing. It's fantastic. They need to keep on fighting the way that they are doing. And I like the fact that there's no gloves, especially when they're not in the car. I love the fact that they're having so much drama together. It's awkward AF, but it's so good to watch.
Yeah, fair enough. No, so most of you think about 2/3 of you, or 2/3 of you or so, think that we should remain the same. Which, to be fair, there's still a number of votes there, but that's completely fair. So let's move on to our next talking point then, which is TV director not showing us on track overtakes, which I'm sure is a hot one for a lot of us, as Raggy's just intimated there. But so throughout the race, we're bound to miss some things in the race. Okay, let's put that out there straight away. Without doing a split screen of every single onboard, you're going to miss some things in the race. Fine, but in this race in particular, I noticed we were missing quite a lot. And, I always keep, for this reason, I keep quite a close eye on the leaderboard on the side, and you'll see someone dropping down or whatever. And for example, when Crofty was going, someone's on the outside there, I was like, Perez! I immediately looked at the thing, saw Perez tumble down, I was like, Perez! okay, in live sports, sometimes you miss instant things. That's kind of a different thing. But another thing, though, is that they knew stuff was happening, and they were choosing to put it in the little TV that's about a 16th of the size of the full screen, and that was where we were seeing some overtakes. I didn't love that. I think, missing things is one thing. Knowing something's happening and either not showing it or showing it in the tiny screen is another, and okay, it was an exciting race at the front. It's not like they were just showing Verstappen doing lap after lap after lap, dominating. There was stuff happening they were showing on screen, but it wasn't like there was multiple overtakes happening at the same time. They were showing, say, Hamilton closing in on whoever, and then, an overtake was happening on a 16th of the screen. So my question that I posed to you, Rwaggy, and that I also posed to chat, is do we prefer to see overtakes, as in do we, regardless of what position it's for, do we just want to see on-track action, overtakes, or would we rather see, let's be honest, the more relevant content, so like the leaders? Okay, we're obviously not going to watch Verstappen just go around on his own. However, would we rather watch Hamilton closing in on Verstappen, getting in within 2 seconds, etc., and then have an overtake in small, or would you rather it the other way around, whereby we see the overtake even if it's for 16th place and it's between Schumacher and Tsunoda, whatever? Do you want to see that in full and then kind of maybe Hamilton in the small? I mean, what's your take on that, Rwaggy?
I mean, I like to look at Formula One as like how you'd expect a movie to be, right? You wouldn't want to necessarily just go, oh, well, we've seen how they start the qualifying, we've seen how the race is going to start, and then we know that this person is going to finish the race, right? We kind of expect that Mercedes are going to be crazy fast. For me personally, I think I would much rather see the overtakes, because at any moment, anything can go wrong, right? We didn't even get to see the Bottas-Russell crash until we saw replays of it. Fine, I understand that's missing.
I'm gonna jump in here to add an extra point to what you're saying, because I know where you're going, and I do agree. But like you said, anything can happen. But anything could happen, especially in the wet, to the leaders. So Verstappen could be going around on his own, but he could just spin at any moment. So that's kind of a counter to your point.
Well, yes, but anybody could spin at any moment in time. You can't watch all the cars at the same time. So,
but the leaders are going to be more relevant. It's bigger news if the leader spins than it is a 16th place spins.
If you think, there's a more likely chance that Hamilton's going to spin, then I think you're more likely to see Nikita Mazepin spin than you are going to see Hamilton spin.
Yes.
So I mean, that for me is just null and void. I think even if Hamilton goes for a maneuver, he's using DRS, which is in itself a very easy way to overtake with. Not saying I dislike DRS, I just think it kind of takes away the drama for an overtake. You just go, oh yeah, well, he's in the tow. Yep, they've got the DRS. Yep, he can use his overtake button. This is easy peasy. And he's in the faster car, so it's easy peasy. Whereas these guys at the back, because it was a 3-car battle that was happening at the same time as well, he's charging up to the back of Carlos Sainz. We missed that the whole time. And we also missed the, like you mentioned, when, was it Perez, I think, was fighting with someone, they were chopping and changing places nonstop. And the whole time we're just watching Hamilton chase after someone. It's like, yes, it's good to see that Hamilton's chasing someone, but we're missing quality content here, and we didn't even get to see a replay of it. I think there really needs to be a talking to the director where they actually focus on the overtakes that are happening on the track, whether they are physically about to happen or not, whether it's just solid defensive work from somebody over something else. I'd rather see that than see somebody who you would normally expect to be at the front anyway, potentially going for an overtake. I think that always takes precedence for me.
I think I pretty much agree. And someone mentioned there that they should use picture in picture. Of course they did, but it was the overtake shown in picture in small, which to me was odd. Is surely, the primary thing is going to be an overtake, and then if there's multiple overtakes that happen at the same time, it's the one further forward. That's always going to be more interesting, because like you said, anything can happen at any time, but it's more likely to happen when there's an overtake. I mean, we'll get onto it, but just look at the huge crash between Bottas and George Russell. Sometimes you can have a huge crash when cars are side by side. They can easily lock up, just wheel bang, or one goes off, or whatever. There's a million things that can happen. It's more likely to happen when they're side by side. The main point is I just didn't understand why they were showing overtakes in the little box while just showing someone cruising around, because it makes so much more sense to show the overtakes in the full screen and then a little box of Hamilton closing in on Verstappen. Because realistically, Hamilton's, like you said, unlikely to spin, and also Hamilton's not going to make a move from 2 seconds back on Verstappen. Like there isn't anything about to happen in that. Although it is a big part of the race. It didn't really happen so much in this race. But let's say they're on different tyres and Hamilton's closing on Verstappen by 2 seconds a lap. Like that is the main story happening right now. Is Hamilton is closing in. That's the story. Even if there's an overtake for 15th place. The story is still, oh my God, second place is closing on first place. He could steal the win. That's always the biggest story. That is what will be written higher up in the race reviews than Tsunoda overtook Schumacher for 16th place. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
But it could my point is that bit is the bit that should be in the mini screen, because it is a story and it should always be in the mini screen. But I just don't get why you show an overtake in the mini. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree with you.
I do think they need to do a better job of picking things up. There were certain things that they just missed, or not missed, but missed live, and they had to show a replay or whatever. And there was all sorts going on. I can't actually think of any now, but I remember seeing a couple. Okay. I'm going to mention this again a little bit later on, but a good example is Nikita Mazepin. As far as I can tell, by the timings, he had multiple spins in this race. We saw one at the end where they did actually show a replay of the spin. I'm pretty certain he had at least 2 other spins, because again, we're gonna do a honourable mentions and a dishonourable mentions at the end. So we'll get onto these kind of smaller stories at the end. But basically, obviously, Schumacher has an issue. He was way off the back even after the safety car restart. He was like 30 seconds or a minute off the back, miles off the back of the pack. About 10, 15, 20 laps later, Mazepin was a minute behind Schumacher. And I was like, hold on, wait, how has that happened? He's lost 2 minutes to his teammate across the last 20 laps. What? So clearly he's made some mistakes. That's not raw pace. He didn't come in for the slicks at that point either. So he almost certainly had some whoopsies that we just didn't see on camera. Yeah. And okay, I guess that gets into another point. Are they trying to save him a little bit, and almost like, he is one of the 20 elite drivers that gets an F1 drive, and it's a bit embarrassing that he's spinning 10 times in a race. So potentially they were trying to save face a little bit and not showing it. But to me, it's still a story. Regardless, it's not their job to define the storyline. It's their job to report or show the storyline, I guess. So they just need to do a better job of picking up those sort of incidents, because even if it's at the back, it's still a story that Mazepin spun off. Yeah, did you notice that, Raggy? That Mazepin just...
Yeah.
You did?
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't notice that Mazepin, because it was... I was getting ready for the race that I was doing, and my teammates were watching it at the same time, and they were saying, like, how is Schumacher ahead of Mazepin, and he's being in the pits to replace his wing? Like, what's happened? And he's not just ahead of him, he's like 20 odd seconds ahead of him. What's happened? And yeah, absolutely. They completely missed it. I think, again, the whole media side of things, I think the director really needs to start choosing his cameras properly, and deciding what's going to be on screen better. I think the camera people could also do a much better job than what they did, because they missed so much. Granted, obviously, you don't necessarily know which cars are going to be going for what, but at the same time, as a camera person, you need to know what position people are in and what their relatives are roughly, so that you know who you need to be focusing on when it comes into it. Because you would have seen, there's a car behind Bottas and Russell, which was, I think, an Alfa Romeo at the time. You know, realistically, they're not going to go for an overtake on the two of them, but the other two are absolutely going to go for it. So why would you not focus on those two individuals? To
be fair, we don't know how that works. As far as I don't know, but I'm assuming they probably have an earpiece, and the director tells them concentrate on X car, and that is their job, to concentrate on whatever the hell director tells them to concentrate on. Because obviously, for example, to follow Hamilton throughout a whole lap off board, each camera has to be waiting for Hamilton and then concentrate on Hamilton as he comes past. They all have to do that individually. There's about 30 people around the track that has to do that. So clearly they're told concentrate on Hamilton, ignore the car just ahead, ignore the car but just behind, concentrate on him. So I don't think it's their fault. I feel like it's probably not fair just to say it's like the camera people's fault. And also I will add that having been to a live race, which I'm sure a lot of us have done at some point, or at least will do, it is quite hard to keep track of what's going on. Have you not been to one?
Nope.
Oh my God. Get out of the stream now. That's it.
Bye, guys.
Fake fan. You need to go. Silverstone this year, if it happens, you got to go straight away, ASAP.
I was planning to go to Silverstone last year with my admin team hooked me up so I could go, but obviously COVID.
Ah, okay. Well, hopefully you get to see one soon. But it is genuinely hard to keep track of what's going on, because if you haven't got a TV or timing or anything like that, then it's just cars going past. You're like, oh, I don't even know who. You barely can know which driver's which, let alone what's going on particularly. Obviously, hopefully you get a screen and stuff, or at least, obviously the camera people, hopefully they've got a better feed than you have at the side of the track. But I just wanted to add that in, that potentially it is hard.
Yeah.
I think there was a comment that I wanted to mention, but I've completely lost it because I forgot to extract it out. So, someone said he thinks Mazza Expletive had 4 spins, I think. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but there was definitely multiple spins in there somewhere. As I said, we'll get on to the dishonourable mentions. I'm going to drop a spoiler straight away. He's in the dishonourable mentions later on. But anyway, let's move on to the next talking point then. So the 4th talking point is going to be a day to forget for the leading second driver. So I've kind of lumped Perez and Bottas into this point. Let's start with Bottas. I mean, it all went wrong from qualifying, didn't it, really? I mean, qualified, was it like 8th? Really bad. I mean, considering Hamilton was on pole, arguably Hamilton did an excellent job to be on pole. I think Red Bull potentially, very slightly, had the fastest car in qualifying. Up for debate. That's another story. Hamilton did a good job to get pole, don't get me wrong. But Bottas, even in close qualifying, shouldn't be 8th. And to me, that sort of performance is why I believe they will replace him with George Russell next year, regardless of what Hamilton does. Because it's just not good enough. As the field gets tighter and tighter, I think he was only like 4 or 5 tenths or so, off the top of my head, I'll see if I can find it on here, back from Hamilton, which shouldn't happen, but fairly typical of Bottas, if we're being honest. Let me get the qualifying result up here. But because it was so close, it pushed him down to P8, and that is a reason for Mercedes to go, hey, look, it's too close now for you to be 4 tenths off. Get out. We need someone else. Let's have a look here. So it's not even on the screen. I have to zoom out to get Bottas on the same screen. It was about half a second, just under half a second, which we've seen before, but normally Mercedes have got a half a second advantage, so it doesn't matter. But today, yesterday, it punished him. Starting P8, had a so-so start, very, very anonymous. We barely saw him in the first, 10, 15 laps of the race. He just wasn't doing anything. And then... yeah, I mean, not much happened. Then we'll get on to the Russell moment. So he was still struggling, really. And then, of course, we had the huge crash. George Russell tried to go on the outside of him. We're going to talk about that incident now. Because for me...
I'm strapped in.
Yeah, get your seatbelt. So for me, it was Bottas's fault.
Oh, no. I was worried he was going to say that.
So, okay,
no.
Before we go further, I will add that it was a racing incident. I'm not saying Bottas should take a penalty or it was horrifically Bottas's fault. It was a racing incident. If you told me you have to pick one driver for it to be at fault, for me, easily Bottas. So let's run through the incident first. So Bottas was still struggling. I mean, the fact that George Russell in a Williams, one of the slowest cars, was able to even pull a move on him in the first place is... I mean, it shouldn't have happened. It happened, whatever. Okay,
yeah,
so you're on a wet, dry track. You've got a relatively narrow, dry line. It is difficult to overtake. Both drivers knew this, including George Russell. George Russell went for the outside line, knowing full well that it was the outside line that was dry because that's the racing line. That is the dry line. So he smartly, like any other driver would do, went for the outside line, forcing Bottas to go potentially on the wet line. I'm going to try and say this factually first before I give my opinion. Then there's a slight kink in the track, and then Bottas appeared to come over slightly on George Russell. Again, the kink in the track makes it hard to kind of figure that out. And then ultimately, Russell gets kind of squeezed out. They mentioned grass. I think he actually got wheel spin on the wet, which then kicked his rear out onto the grass, which caused even more wheel spin and sliding. By the way, wheel spin at 320 kilometers an hour in top gear is insane. Got the huge oversteer, smashed into the side of Bottas, pushed them both out the race. Quite a big crash. Of course, we saw the drama afterwards. We'll get onto the drama afterwards as the next point. So that's kind of the facts what happened. For me, Bottas's fault, again, very marginally, because the track kinks left. Okay, that is an extenuating circumstance. But both drivers knew that. It was a risky move regardless, whatever. But Bottas should have stayed a bit more to the inside. Knowing that the track was kinking left, I believe if Bottas stayed his course, George Russell would have had not a car's width on the outside. Because Bottas, to me, with with the help of the kink, which is the extenuating circumstance for me, kind of almost squeezed him. I don't think he meant to. I think it was the kink is why he squeezed him, but did squeeze him. So as far as George Russell's concerned, he's trying to go on the outside. Yes, it's an aggressive move. Yes, it's a risky move. Tries to go around the outside and then effectively gets squeezed because of the track. Ends up out too far, wheel spin into the side of him. What a lot more he could do. Yes, he could have backed out, but let's bear in mind they're racing at 300 kilometers an hour. There's no time to back out, to do anything really. It was effectively because Bottas squeezed him, it pushed him wider than he wanted to be. To me, the reason it's Bottas's fault more is because Bottas, to me, was a bit aggressive. If you make an aggressive move on someone, they're going to make an aggressive move in retaliation to avoid you, whatever. That's why you would do it normally. Again, the corner, extenuating circumstances. Normally, that's why you do it. In doing that, surely you would know that Russell was going to be pushed onto the wet and sliding. Like, what the result isn't a surprise. The surprise to me is that Bottas, because of the kink, effectively squeezed him. Again, it's very hard. It's a very marginal Bottas's fault because of the kink. Without the kink, clearly Bottas's fault for me. So, I mean, Rwaggy, I feel like, well, I know full well you've got an opposing opinion on this, but feel free to give your opinion. But then also, I want to hear from you specifically on what you'd have thought on the exact same incident if there wasn't a kink on the track. The car's positioning would have been the same, but there was no kink. But before that, go ahead and give your view on the incident.
I'm going to send you a link real quick. I don't know if you want to put this on the stream or not as a screenshot. Fully up to you. But when you do open that, if you go to the 19 seconds thereabouts, the moments where
I feel like, I probably can't show this. I'm not going to show that.
I wouldn't recommend it. You could take a screenshot, I guess, and then put it up there.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. You carry on with your point while I figure this out.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is there is more than sufficient space for me, and this is what I would call in iRacing a mind punt, right?
A mind punt? Oh, okay. Yeah.
So Bottas did move right. Okay, there's no. I mean, it's not like he yanked the wheel to the right and moved across him. It was quite a subtle move to the right and did squeeze him. Yeah, I would agree. But there's so much space there. Agreed. It is where the area he's gone onto is a damp area of the track, but there is so much space there. There is nothing more than fear that caused Russell to spin. Okay, I don't think that it was a driver input error. I think he just ran a bit too wide. To me, it looks like he actually got onto the white paint on the actual. In fact, no, you can see at the point of when his car spins, he touches grass.
I think the slide started before he hit the grass, but I've not microanalyzed it. I could well be wrong on that.
I'm just playing it over and over again, but yeah, you can see his wheel at the point of when his front right touches the grass. He's already losing the car. So I think you're right there. But I mean, either way, Bottas did give the space that was needed. Granted, he's giving him minimal amounts of space. I do think, though, again, as we said earlier, if you're going to take the outside line, you're signing the T's and C's for me to say, I accept the risks that come with this. This is on me. As soon as I saw the incident the first time, immediately I pointed fingers at Russell. I do respect the fact that Bottas did come across him, and yes, I mean, it's marginal, very marginal. I would say that Bottas did do a mind punt. I think it just ended up really poorly for him because he ended up being, taken out alongside of it. For me, this is just Russell getting scared, nothing more. I think that finally, I want to say this, there's only been 2 incidents. This is number 2, where I've seen Russell show himself as a rookie. The only other one was also at the same track last year. That's the only thing.
So
I don't think it'd be anything else.
The thing is, I completely agree with everything you said. Absolutely. The reason I blame Bottas is because I go a step further. I completely agree. I think it was a mind punt. I love that term, by the way. Whether intentional or not, because of the kink in the track, is up for debate. Not really relevant. I do think it was a mind punt, regardless of cause. Where I put it at Bottas's door is that in a wet-dry condition, he mind punted someone onto the wet on slick tyres, and then was surprised when that person spun into him. You are asking for trouble. If you mind punt someone onto a wet part of the track, of course he's going to spin and hit you. Okay, he might not hit you, but of course he's going to have an issue. And I know that he was potentially trying to cause that. Okay. He's obviously not trying to cause a crash. Obviously, he was trying to cause him to back out. It was his ideal strategy.
Absolutely.
But it was an aggressive mind punt that caused the incident. So it was Bottas's fault because he did the mind punt.
So I would disagree about two things, really. One, aggressive mind putting is probably a bit too extreme because I don't think aggressive it would suggest to me that he threw the wheel to the right to try and really scare him.
Again, that's where the trap comes into it, isn't it? The kink in the trap.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think even if you look at the point of where he moves to the right, it's very mild. On top of that, Russell, again, is signing that T and C's. When he decides to go for the outside line, he's signing the T's and C's effectively to say that he's happy to go into the wet part of the track. He has the option to, because Bottas moves over fine, right? Before Russell actually goes for the outside line. And then Russell then clearly decides, fine, I'll take that wet line. It's a gamble. It just didn't pay off for him. Ultimately, again, I agree. Racing incident, nothing further. I don't think that needed to be anything more than it was. But for Russell to go up to Bottas afterwards and to immediately start kicking off at him, A, shows a degree of disrespect, in my opinion, and B, it shows that I don't think he actually realized what he did wrong there. Because regardless, they both did something wrong. I think Russell's was just that bit bigger.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll get onto the kind of drama afterwards in a second. That's the next point. But for me, yes, absolutely, I agree. Russell can't complain. He took the risk. It didn't pay off. I agree. Russell can't complain. That's why it's a racing incident. It was a risky move and it didn't pay off. But because you make a risky move, doesn't entitle the other person to punt you off effectively. I know Bottas didn't punt him off, but you're almost saying that if someone takes a risky move, then oh well.
No, not necessarily. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you're going to take the outside line, you have to understand that any mistakes that you make are on you, and that's it. Right? If the move goes south, it's on you. Now, I'm not saying that then gives the driver who has the priority, which in this case is Bottas, in my opinion. I wouldn't say that it gives Bottas the ability to push him off the track, because no, you've still got to respect the space. You've still got to respect that car exists, and you can't just expect it to disappear, right? But in this circumstance, there was sufficient space on the right side, more than sufficient space, I would say, for Russell to be there, because Russell expected Bottas to go further right, which is, I think, why Russell ended up crashing in the first place. I think he was so worried that the Bottas was just going to continue that trajectory towards him that it ended up being Russell taking himself off the track and then taking Bottas with him. Yeah, ultimately, what it looks like to me.
Yeah. Like I said, we both said it was a racing incident. I think it is what it is. It was risky on both parts, and it didn't pay off for either. To me, though, racing's, you got to get to the finish to score any points, right? So you got to take some risks, but I guess you drew a line. And I'd argue both of them probably went over that line. So they both got their karma for it effectively. I'm gonna have a vote as well on this one, just because I'm interested in what you guys think. I've not done a poll anywhere else, but I want to know whether you think if I was forcing each and every one of you, tell me whose fault that was. Okay, whether you think it's a racing incident or not is irrelevant. If you had to pick either George Russell or Valtteri Bottas, whose fault do you think it is? Vote right now.
Who's more at fault? I think you should probably say.
Yeah, okay, who's more at fault? So put in chat right now, either put Bottas if you think it's more Bottas' fault, or put George if you think it was George Russell's fault. That's the easier spellings of their names, which is why I've gone there. Bottas or George? Bottas' fault for put Bottas. If you think it was George Russell's fault, put George
split
in chat. It looks fairly split for now.
Yeah.
There's more.
I mean, the problem is you got people putting Russell and George. So it's hard to really say which one. You'd have to put them both together.
Yeah,
so Russell and George.
Because Russell, 1 L or 2 L's is the reason I didn't do it.
Oh,
people are going to spell it wrong.
Many Bottas's.
A lot of people putting Russell would have spelled wrong. Put George if you think George, and put Bottas if you think Bottas' fault. More fault. Because Bottas is winning at the moment, but also Russell's there as well. But I do think it's looking like
21, 29. Yeah, it's definitely Bottas still.
So it does seem to be, again, about 2/3 think it was more Bottas. So that's a victory for me, Raggy. That makes us, what do I make it in this?
I'll give you that. You're wrong, but I'll give you that.
No. Chat disagrees. Chat disagrees.
I won't do that to you.
Anyway, another point within this same talking point is, of course, let me get it up. Is of course the drama we had afterwards. Before we even move on to Perez, this is quite a big talking point we've got on our hands here. But there was a bit of handbags. I think there's adrenaline in the moment. Of course, George Russell got out of his car quite quickly, went over to Bottas and just said whatever he said to him. Bottas gave him a gesture, shall we say, then Russell kind of tapped him on the helmet. It wasn't a hard tap, but it was a tap on the helmet, and they kind of parted ways. Obviously, a bit of drama, a lot of adrenaline, especially after a 300k crash like that. Thankfully, neither of them was hurt, and they were able to have these handbags, so we can have this conversation, especially in that infamous corner, I should say. But for me, that's fine. I think we love that sort of thing, right? Like, as much as it's not very professional, it's human. Like, you're annoyed at someone. They've just punted you out of the race, and George Russell was thinking, I might better get points today, and he's annoyed at him, and he's gone over to him in the heat of the moment with adrenaline pumping, and I'm annoyed at you, sort of thing. And then Bottas has gone, bugger off, sort of thing. I love that. My question to you, Raggy, and to you, chat, is a minor one, but Crofty said soon after, apologies if you were offended by that. And I'm like, who is offended by a middle finger? I mean, I don't think you should be offended by swearing. I kind of get it with swearing, although I don't really understand as society why we designate certain words are bad and certain aren't. That's a whole other discussion. But who's offended by, we're watching these heroes that have, got so much adrenaline and stuff, and it was such a minor thing. Okay, a big fight, unacceptable. Whatever. That little bit of handbags with a little gesture and a little tap on the helmet, who's offended by that? I know he doesn't necessarily mean it literally, but the fact that he was even told to apologise for it, to me, is just so stupid. I almost feel like it should have a warning before the race. Hey, you may have the odd bit of swearing or the odd... I don't think you should have a warning either, but I'd rather that than feel need to be like, apologies if you were offended by that gesture that Bottas just gave. They're like, stupid to me. What do you think, Raggy?
I think, honestly, I don't want to go completely off topic here, but I think we live in a situation where it's almost become illegal to be offended, right? But the bit specifically for F1 I want to point out is there is a very real possibility that you could watch live someone die in a car, and you're worried whether or not somebody's going to be flipping the bird at somebody. Just look at the Grosjean crash. He should not have survived. Like, realistically, everybody who's seen that crash have all said the same thing. How the hell is he still alive, right? That we could have watched someone die live on TV, and we're worried about somebody flipping the bird. I think, realistically, motorsports as a whole is one of those, there needs to be a level of acceptance that you need to be around about a teenager or above to if you was to give it like one of those ratings, I don't know what you call it. They need to say like a film's like 12 or 15 or whatever. I would say, personally, F1 or motorsports as a whole should really be for 12s or above, based on the fact there is a real possibility of somebody being killed or dying as a result of something, like when we saw the F2, for example. And I think at the same time, there's because of how heated they do get and how easy it is to get irate in a situation like that, especially when you've had a high-speed crash like that. Apparently, I heard a stat, I don't know how accurate it is, the crash that Bottas had was at the same speed that Ayrton Senna had when he died. Bear that in mind. So that's obviously a plus in the way that we've very clearly improved when it comes to safety standards. But also, we could have seen someone die today had that been 20 years ago, whatever. So yeah, it needs to be a 12 or above at least. And I think the slight side to this is we need to start being more accepting of it's totally okay to be offended. It's as long as it's not like physical abuse or even verbal abuse to an extent, it's fine to be offended.
Yeah, and I said bad language, swearing is a whole nother debate that we won't get into today because we'll be going for another hour just on that one debate. But I hadn't considered that actually, to be honest. It's an excellent point. As you said, thankfully it very rarely happens. But you could see the end of someone's life live on TV potentially. And I agree. So racing should naturally be kind of a viewer discretion is advised type thing. I suppose it is a dangerous sport. And yeah, I mean that should extend out to that. I mean, obviously, there's a kind of level of respect. Is that after that huge crash, George Russell should have been going to ask if he was okay, not going over there to have a go at him. You'd hope that he did check that first and that he was conscious and okay. We don't know what was said or anything like that, but there's ever a respect that should be there. That's just part of sport, though, is that some people respect some people don't. But yeah, I agree. It's like you said, if you're offended by that, that's your own personal problem. There's a line to draw. There was some comments that I won't repeat that Verstappen made I believe it was last season over the radio, which were actually had racial.
Yeah, I know you're on about.
I don't know how to word it, but it had racial negativity attached to it, should we say? That sort of thing, it's okay to be offended by. It's okay to be offended by anything, but that sort of thing should be apologised for. And that should be actually that was unacceptable, because language can hurt, language can be unacceptable. So I do think there is a certain line to draw. But yeah, I just think that sort of thing in the heat of the moment, like, who cares? These guys, even if they had a little bust up, like, again, they shouldn't. There should be the respect there, but you don't need to apologise for watching someone push someone over because they're annoyed at them or something. You don't need to apologise for that. So it's weird that they felt a need to apologise for the middle finger. I just kind of wanted to bring that up because I thought it was a bit strange. But anyway, we won't dwell on that one too much longer because otherwise we're going to run over really heavily this one. But I want to also bring up Perez under this point, because Perez had a very polarising weekend, should we say. He had a fantastic out-qualifying Max Verstappen for the first time since Ricciardo in 2018, I think. Was it 2018? Something like that. I don't know. First time for years that Verstappen's been out-qualified. Unbelievable. Verstappen is known as a qualifying king. Yes, everybody has an off day, whatever. But the fact is, he's out-qualified, some really hopeful people, including Gasly, who we now know is actually a really very good driver. And he always out-qualifies them. Hold a bit about the second tier Red Bull, whatever. So anyway, for Perez to out-qualify him, great job. He put together a great qualifying lap. I do think he's not completely at home in the car yet. But then, of course, today did have a few issues, should we say. Just too many mistakes, wasn't it? It was just not good enough for a top team. They signed Perez to be solid and dependable. It wasn't good enough. It's still only a second race. They don't get any testing really these days. So I think he just needs a bit more time in the car to kind of get used to everything, get used to the car, how it handles new regulations. Let's not forget, it's also a Max Verstappen car. He's got a particular driving style. Perez has got a different one. So to me, although today wasn't good enough, Perez, I kind of forgive him because it's his second race. If we're talking about his 10th race, or definitely his 20th race, absolutely unacceptable. They signed him to be the dependable driver. But this particular one, I'm going to forgive him for. I just hope that he can get it together, because yesterday out qualifying Verstappen, almost getting pole position, would have been epic. He should have been arguably on the podium today, certainly with the pace that Verstappen was showing. Actually, in the first into the race as well, he was nowhere, but that was probably his first ever laps in the wet in the Red Bull potentially. So again, fair enough, give him a chance. But I just kind of wanted to bring him up because to me, although it was a bad day, I'm basically completely forgiven him. My question to you, Raggy, will be, do you think he'll be able to get there? Do you think he'll be able to overcome that second seat Red Bull curse that we're seeing the last couple of years with Albon and previously Gasly, where they just couldn't overcome the car for a million different reasons? They just couldn't get anywhere near Verstappen, let's be honest. Do you think Perez will be able to overcome that in time? Do you think he just needs a bit more time, or do you think he will befall the fate of the second Red Bull seat?
I absolutely believe Perez will be able to handle that car in a few races' time. For me, when it comes to like Albon, Gasly, Kvyat, the other drivers that have been in the second Red Bull seat, I think a lot of it's just come down to the pressure, and they've not quite got the experience that they needed in order to be successful in the car. The second Red Bull seat has so much pressure on it because of what is available, what can be done from Max Verstappen's perspective. I think it kind of is quite daunting for anybody who's the second driver, because they've got to be somewhat close to him. And I think realistically, what we don't realize, we don't see quite so much, is I actually think Verstappen is a fantastic driver, incredibly good driver that is outperforming what the Red Bull should be doing. Although not necessarily this year, but definitely last year. And I think now that Perez is in there, I think he's more than experienced. He doesn't strike me as somebody who really caves to pressure. He's very much a very, very calm and happy individual. So I think, give it time. He'll absolutely be in it. I mean, he was kind of the same with Racing Point, to be honest. It took him a while to get used to that car, but then when he did get used to it, he really started to show what he's made of. And now that he's in a car like this, which is a very high performance car, and he's got a lot of backing monetary-wise, I think he's A, safe at Red Bull, and B, will be more than good enough soon enough. I think he will be. I don't know necessarily, because I mean, you've got to then factor in Max Verstappen's going to need some really crap races in order for Perez to beat him, I think, or he's going to have some incredibly good strategy. But let's not take anything away from the fact that the conditions today were incredibly difficult for all drivers, and so many people, including 7-time world champion, making mistakes as well. Just shows how hard it was today. You can be forgiven to an extent, but yeah, he does need to get used to that car very quickly.
I think that's an important point to make, is that as far as I can recall, the only driver to not make any mistakes today was Lando Norris. Did we see any Norris mistakes?
The only mistake, and you can only really count it a minor mistake, was he was touching his clutch pedal with his knee.
Oh, yes, of course. So that was his only mistake. It cost him a couple of tenths. Yeah, that was quite funny.
So what's going on?
Exactly. Verstappen made a mistake. He almost dropped it under the safety car. Hamilton made a mistake. Everybody made a mistake out there. He's still new to the team. I agree. I think he will get there in time. I'm actually cheering for him. I actually really like Perez. I never used to like him. I used to feel like he was overrated. He was like the dependable guy that would get always hoover up the podiums, and I felt like he was lucky more. Last year he grew on me, especially after his win and stuff. He really grew on me, and now I really like him. He's actually my fantasy team as well, by the way. So as my turbo driver, getting double points. So I very much am cheering for him. I do hope he can get there, and I do think he will, given time. I'm going to give him till mid-season, even. I think he should be there after 5 races, but I'm going to give him till sort of mid-season before kind of making judgment on whether he's going to be able to hold a candle to Verstappen. And I agree. I think he's safe there, at least for this year. So, and also a person said, Max isn't very calm, lol. True to some extent, but he's quite dependable. Like, he's always able, like Hamilton is. If he makes a mistake, he will make up for it. He will get back through, not calm. It's not quite the right word. Dependable maybe is more the right word. But, yes, anyway. Yes.
I think...
Karen? No, you, Karen.
I was going to say, for Max in particular, I think calm is kind of the right word, but at the same time the wrong word. I think when it comes down to nerves, he's calm, right? There's no breaking his nerves. He's completely under control all the time.
Just to add to that, he'll often say in the middle of the races, it was fairly recently, he was asking his engineer if he'd remembered to drink. He was like, have you remembered to drink in this race? Sort of thing, and that's a perfect example of that.
He's never phased when it comes to being on track. He's never, the pressure doesn't ever do anything to him. But when it comes to being, I think it's just his character. He's that kind of person where, like a Kimi kind of character, just doesn't give a damn. It will absolutely just get on with it. But the difference between him and Kimi is Verstappen is a lot more vocal, and Kimi is just very short sentences, very sharp, straight to the point, doesn't mess about. There's a lot there. I like it.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our 5th and final talking point. But as I said, after this, we'll go through our driver of the day and then some honourable and dishonourable mentions. But the 5th and final talking point is going to be about recovering your lap under a safety car or red flag. So obviously we saw today Lewis Hamilton make an uncharacteristic mistake. I think he was pushing very hard to try and beat Verstappen, trying to win. He knows it's important to beat Verstappen this season. He knows they're going to be hopefully battling it out all season. He was pushing very hard, tried to unlap, I think it was actually George Russell, tried to unlap himself from there, went on the inside, on the wet, lost control, touched the barrier. He even said afterwards, I don't often make mistakes like this. So a rare mistake for him, a mistake nonetheless. Then, of course, someone said on Twitter 90 seconds. I don't know if it's quite that long, but a long time to get out of the barrier because he was trying to find reverse and he obviously nudged his wing and all this sort of thing. Got back to the pits. Then there was a safety car. So he's fortunate, obviously, that he was able to box and not lose that much time. But at that point, he'd still lost a lap because it took him so long to recover. So he was then a lap down. He then got fortunate that he would have got it under the safety car, but he also got it under the red flag. He was able to unlap himself and then was able to get P2. He obviously was far from the only car to unlap himself. In fact, I think most of the field. I think he was 9th, and he wasn't the last car to be unlapped. So I think the top 6 were the only cars not lapped at that point, or something like that. So obviously, it wasn't just him that benefited. A lot of people have benefited. He is obviously most notable because, not arguably, definitely, he would not have got a podium without being able to unlap himself. He's not going to be able to get a whole lap back on the top 6 over the course of the last 20 laps or whatever it was. It's not happening.
Yeah.
However, it created the story of him getting back to P2. So really, my question to Rwaggy and as always to you guys is do we think that should remain? Do we think we want to allow cars to effectively get a free lap back it creates some excitement. It means that someone like Hamilton can get back through in it, and it spices up the races. It also removes the car from the pack, don't forget. So if there's 5-lap cars between first and second, when you allow them to unlap, they're no longer between the first and second, so you actually get a proper race, which I think is probably the main point of it. Or, you know, this sort of thing, Hamilton would not have got a podium today. He probably would have finished like maybe 7th, absolute max today. So it can overly benefit somebody who has made quite a big mistake. Hamilton, let's be honest, and I'm not going to say didn't deserve second place, but without that slice of good fortune, would not have got second place and would have deserved the position he got because it was his mistake that he made. So, what do we think? Raggy, do you like the current rule? Do you think it should change? What do you think?
I think they did exactly what they should do, in my opinion. That was the right call. For me, F1 in itself, if you make it too... if you basically make it completely where you made mistakes, so you're gonna, you made your bed, you're laying in it, kind of thing. I think that is, absolutely fine. But then you'd have to do it as an all or nothing approach, because if you're then going to make it so they can't bring themselves back if they've been red flagged or whatever, then I feel like you also shouldn't allow the pack to bunch back up again when you bring out a safety car, right? They should keep the same amount. Basically, just do a VSC only. Effectively, is what I'm saying. Because that's the only way that you can ensure proper fairness, if you want to call it that. I like the fact it brings back the chance for redemption, and I think F1 would be a hella boring if we didn't have the ability to back the pack right up. I actually think VSCs are terrible. I actually think VSCs are a really bad idea, and they should be removed purely because it doesn't allow drivers to bring themselves back. It kind of leaves them frozen out there. I think at the same time, VSC is useful for some things that are going to be really quickly easy to fix, and you can effectively get the race back underway again. And I don't think we need a full safety car in order to fix that. But at the same time, I would like them to be able to bunch in again whilst under VSC. That's my opinion anyway. I do like the fact that they will be able to be unlapped, and I do like the fact that it meant that Hamilton had to give it his usual hammer time situation in order for him to get back to that P2, because regardless of whether you can blame the car or not, he did still have to give it absolutely everything in order to achieve what he achieved. And he, Sainz made it difficult for him, Leclerc made it difficult for him, and even Norris to an extent made it difficult for him. And it showed that Norris actually is a really good driver. It did still show a bit of weakness within him, that he does still act when he's a bit of a rookie when it comes to the 7-time world champion chasing him down.
He got a bit flustered, didn't he? Yeah,
absolutely.
I basically completely agree. And in posing this question, I'm more playing devil's advocate, particularly because I saw a few people on Twitter saying, lucky Hamilton, whatever. I agree. I actually though think that they've got the balance bang on at the moment. I do like the safety car. I like that it bunches people up, but equally sometimes it kills a race or it takes advantage away from someone. We've had races lost in. Was it Ricciardo lost a race win in Monaco one year because of a safety car or something like that? Can't really recall the exact details. So there's kind of pros and cons of both, I would say, but I like the way they do it. So if it's just like a bit of debris on track, quick VSC, go get the debris, get on with racing. Don't mess about, just quick VSC. I think if the VSC is going to be longer than 30 seconds, throw a full safety car, because I just feel like it's a bit fairer. Then everyone can pit if they want to pit and blah 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 blah. Which again, they tend to already do all of this. Where I've criticised the FIA, I'm going to say Michael Massey in particular. I don't like getting personal. I don't mean to get personal, but it is his decision as a race director. In the past, is that he, more so than Charlie Whiting did previous, he tends to do things for the show a little bit. Now, I'm not saying he throws a safety car because the race is hella boring and we need a safety car. He's not that bad. But he will time things and alter things based on how it will improve the show. Now, I've been critical of this in the past because I don't like it, because it's artificial, right? It gets down the road. Well, then should we just have sprinklers at every track, as Bernie suggested before? But actually, recently, I feel like he's got it right. So today, the reason I'm saying this is today, to me, I saw that crash, I saw all the debris, and I immediately said, red flag. That's a red flag. They call that debris. You can't get through that. That's a red flag. It's clearly a red flag. He threw a safety car, and I believe he waited for Hamilton to pit, then he threw the red flag. Because if he did it too soon, if you threw a red flag straight away, Hamilton's incident may not have even counted, and he may have lined up P2 on the grid. and he may have completely got off scot-free. Red flag tends to work on count back. I think it's the standings from the lap before is your standings when you restart, basically, is how red flag works. So Hamilton may have got away completely scot-free. So he did. I believe he did it for the show more today. He threw a safety car. Obviously, there was going to be at least a safety car, so he did that straight away. And then, obviously, I'm not in the race control. He may have genuinely thought that was the right thing, and then looked the track and looked at everything and decided actually no red flag. I believe, to me, I'm not a race director, but I said red flag straight away. I was like, well, that's got to be a red flag. He then waited. So I actually liked that, and that's why I say I actually have kind of changed my opinion, and I believe they get the balance really right now. I think the VSC, safety car, and red flag have all got their own places. I think they all use them. Michael Massey uses them in exactly the right places. I do think he factors in this show. Again, that's the part of my opinion that I've changed, because I actually believe that was the right thing. I think he did the right thing today, because the right decision was to throw a red flag. If he did it earlier, Hamilton would have got off scot-free. Delaying it a bit was good. Where I get a bit hazy is obviously it's Michael Massey's job to run a safe race. It's not his job to alter the show. You don't want him endangering people just to improve the show. Hopefully he wouldn't go that far. But I mean, do you agree with that, Rwaggy?
Pretty much, yeah. For me, I think it's probably going to go very easy to say. I shouldn't need anybody saying it, but I think safety always takes priority, especially with these cars. You cannot have any risks. I think if he saw the debris immediately, that should just be a straight red flag. And then number two, if everybody's in a safe position and you don't have to throw a red flag, then I would agree you take the minimal approach, but try and get the more entertainment out of it. And I think absolutely, if it had caused a problem, he would be in serious trouble. But I think all things considered, it made for a more entertaining race. It meant Hamilton had to give it absolutely everything. And if that was his actual intention, was to wait till Hamilton was effectively screwed by the red flag, then, from a viewer perspective, I
don't think Hamilton was screwed by the red flag. I think he just didn't gain anything from it. Whereas if he threw it 30 seconds, a minute earlier, he may have gained significantly from it. So another call I think he got very right today was the I've completely forgotten it. There was another call. Was it the other safety car? Oh, no, it was the red flag restart is the point I was trying to make. The red flag restart is that, so he went for rolling instead of standing. And to me, absolute right decision. For entertainment, the better choice was the standing start, obviously. Standing starts are more entertaining. Arguably, I'm not even sure they should be in the rules, because I think it's potentially a bit unfair to someone like Verstappen that's doing really well. But, it is in the rules, whatever. He then opted against that, which is his choice, by the way. That is also in the rules. I went for a rolling. That was the right choice. It was more entertaining to do a standing. The grid was partly wet, partly dry. I actually believe most of it was dry, but you were just asking for trouble. It was a wet, dry track. We saw down to turn one was wet all the way to the end, part dry, part wet. Imagine trying to go 3 wide down there. It would have ended in a huge crash. It was the right decision. So that's a great example of him definitely using safety over the entertainment factor, and I think he got that call absolutely spot on today.
Agreed. I would agree with that. Especially if the home straight, like you say, if it is. Especially on the starting bit, the bit where all the actual grid boxes themselves. If they're in their grid boxes and they part of some of the slots are wet and some of them are dry, standing start would have been not just difficult and quite dangerous, but also severely unfair, because those the people who'd be sign a wet box and immediately losing positions for it. Absolutely agree with you. Rolling start, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, that's our top 5 talking points. As I said, we are now, though, going to move on to the driver of the day. Now, it's my stream, so I'm going to call dibs on the first driver of the day. And I'm going to go out there and say Lando Norris. It's the obvious choice. Like, I barely need to qualify it, but I will. Obviously, amazing drive. Unfortunate, but still his mistake yesterday. Arguably should have got P3 on the grid. Didn't work out, whatever. Today, kept his head, got through the grid. Very tricky conditions. As we said, basically everybody out there made a mistake today. He didn't, apart from the minor clutch issue. But again, just solid. No incidents, no spins, no collisions, nothing. Really, really solid drive by Lando Norris. Arguably, because of his pace yesterday, we thought he probably should have been on the podium today even, which is saying something. McLaren have really come a long way. But starting 8th or wherever he started, certainly wasn't guaranteed. But he still brought it home and got another podium, his second ever podium. Unbelievable drive. Almost got the P2. He did a good job. He defended as best he possibly could against Hamilton. I don't think he could have done any more, but defended well against Ferraris. No mistakes. Just dragged on that clutch, which arguably is a McLaren issue to me. Is that shouldn't be possible? Like if you can drag the clutch with your knee through a corner, there's a bit of a design flaw there. But that was his only mistake. And also, obviously a very likeable character. Got driver of the day as well. Everyone voted him the official F1 driver of the day. Absolutely deserving. So glad he got a podium. Unbelievable. I'm really excited to see where he goes. Of course, as well, benefited slightly from team orders, but again, absolutely the right decision. I've got a little note on Ricardo coming up after this, but just again, barely need to qualify. It's very obvious, isn't he? Definitely driver today. I'm going to say though, Rwaggy cannot choose Norris as well. Just to keep it interesting, Rwaggy has to choose somebody else, and I've called dibs. Next time though, Rwaggy, I'll let you have dibs on whatever the next race is.
No, it's fine. Forget it.
Who are you going to go for if not Norris?
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, I do believe it should be Norris, absolutely. But if I had to choose someone else other than Norris, I mean, it's effectively just choosing who had the least mistakes and had the best recovery drive. Because, I mean, Verstappen, to me, would come as an immediate next for the position, because that start was insane. Can I just say? He started third, remember, and absolutely nailed it past Perez and Hamilton into us. And then obviously had the situation, but that's by the by. But incredibly good start. The only mistake that Verstappen made was that minor. I say minor; it could have been huge. But on when he was under the safety car coming through the final corner, and he just got it a little bit wrong when he was trying to warm his tires up, and actually then mounted that curb as a result. Very lucky not to get any damage. Can I just say? Number one. Number two, was very lucky that it wasn't a loss of control completely and falling out the way to the wall. But then other than that, absolutely nailed it. Pace was on point. Consistency was on point. They managed his car completely. Nothing really to say at all other than that. So for me, it would go to Verstappen. But then, I guess an honourable mention for me would be Hamilton. Yes, he made his only mistake, really, which was a huge mistake. And I think he was a bit of a numpty for driving into the wall, because he actually stopped, then drove into the wall. But, whatever. I think he deserves an honourable mention because he did have an incredibly good recovery drive. People are going to say, well, it's the car. I disagree. I think he really showed how good he actually is when he is properly pushing. And not just reckless, because he did calculate all of his overtakes. And it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that was a perfect segue into our honourable mentions there, Rwaggy, like a professional. It was beautiful.
You're welcome. I nailed it.
I think, I've put here Verstappen. I echo exactly what you said. I don't need to repeat it. Nearly bottled it under safety car restart. I've put other than that, flawless. Because he was very lucky. I think potentially the car behind could have even said, "Hey, force majeure," or whatever the wording is. He's off track. He's having a spin. I'm just going to go past. See you later. I think he was very, very close to that point of the drive behind going, "Hey, see you later." So he was a bit fortunate from that. But other than that, flawless race, great race. Hamilton as well. I put, again, exact same reasons. I won't rehash them. But I just put typical Hamilton race, always getting the podium no matter what. I put he was a bit keen to get through the traffic to get to Max, which I mentioned earlier. And I've put fought back through. Would Bottas have done the same? Question mark. We've kind of already spoken about enough about Bottas. But I agree. He didn't, did he? I tweeted out at the time that we're now going to get a direct comparison of Hamilton fighting through versus Bottas fighting through. But it wasn't a direct comparison because, of course, Hamilton had a DRS. DRS was quite powerful. Bottas, of course, didn't have the DRS. But then also in wet, can you see someone like Max Verstappen just being stuck, or Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, being stuck in 9th or 10th for most of the race in the wet? No, they're going to find a wet line and they're going to get past without DRS. So overtaking is just different in the wet, not necessarily harder depending on your ability. Again, that's why Hamilton said the honourable and Bottas isn't, because he cut his way through the pack, and to go from 9th to P2 was an unbelievable drive. I've also put down Charles Leclerc. I just put got everything out of the car today. Again, I feel like he may have been another flawless driver. I can't recall. Actually, there was on the formation lap. He had a little whoopsie, didn't he? He had that spin, but then was lucky that he could recover his position before the safety car line one. Otherwise, he'd have to start from the pits, which would have been a whole different race. But anyway, hey, he was trying to find the limits of the track, right, on that formation lap. So I don't even blame him for that, to be honest. really solid for me for him. I'll just run through my honourable mentions, Raggy, and then you can add any if there is any extras for you. Carlos Sainz, again, I've just put solid day, needs to get used to the car more, because it was a good day. Yes, he made a few mistakes, but much like Perez, it's only his second race in the car. I think he'll get there. I think he'll be up there with Leclerc. I think they'll be incredibly even teammates once Carlos is up to speed. They already are pretty even, but at the moment Charles is the one that's kind of reliably bringing home the results, and Carlos is the one making the odd mistakes. So I basically forgive him for those mistakes because he's new, and other than that, it was a decent result. I mean, he's up there in P5 still. So Ferrari did have a good car today, and he brought home arguably the maximum from the car, apart from perhaps just beating his teammate. But yeah, and then my only other honourable mention is Tsunoda, actually. Arguably, he could be put in the dishonourable mentions, which we'll get onto next. But for me, he gets an honourable mention because he is the perfect rookie. We've had it so much in the past where rookies come in. I mean, Hamilton springs to mind. That was a while ago now. But, Hamilton had so much testing that, yes, he was technically a rookie, but actually he'd driven the car so much that he was basically in season 2 of his F1 career. Tsunoda hasn't had any of that, and I know it's the same for other rookies. But he is showing so much potential. Okay, he's got a great car. Haas has got the other main rookies, obviously, and much more difficult car. So he's got a nice car to drive, but actually, he's showing so much potential. He's showing so much promise. Made the mistake in qualifying yesterday, kicked himself for it. Had a really good race today. Went from 20th to 10th before, unfortunately, dropping it under the safety car. Again, just like I forgive Sainz for only being his second race, despite it being his, 8th season or whatever it is. It was only Tsunoda's second race ever in a Formula 1 car. So, and it was incredibly difficult conditions. So I completely forgive him, and I think Tsunoda actually needs an honourable mention just for getting up to P10 and bringing it back despite his mistakes. And that is it for me for my honourable mentions. Raggy, have you got anything to add to those, or any other drivers to add to our honourable mentions?
And the account constructors, like I said, Ferrari, like you mentioned, they actually did really well. Really good performance from them. Only one slight honourable mention. Vettel, the way that he, and this is I think more of an experience thing, the way that he handled Perez overtaking him, and he foresaw the whole situation going down, and he avoiding that crash altogether, that was a very, very wise move from him. So I think that would be the only other honourable mention.
That's a fair point. I'm hoping Vettel can get to grips a bit more with his car, because he's been struggling so far, isn't he? And we mentioned previously that I think neither of us rate him too highly. But I agree. I think he had a good drive today. Moving on then finally to our dishonourable mentions, which is potentially a bit of a savage topic, but it is what it is. So
roast me section.
Yeah, pretty much. So again, I'm just going to quite quickly run through my dishonourable mentions, and then I'm going to throw it to Raggy for any potential additions. For me, Daniel Ricciardo is actually top of my dishonourable mentions. I've just put no pace, but did the right thing letting Lando through, because he really had no pace. I mean, he let Lando through, which was good of him, because you've seen it before. They didn't always do team orders, so it's good of him to do that. And then within 5 laps, Lando was 8 seconds ahead. He was over a second lap quicker. It was crazy, the difference. And then just really faded. And then he finished P6 there. He finished almost 30 seconds behind his teammate, despite the late safety car on red flag or whatever. So yeah. Really worrying at the moment. First race, they were like, oh, yeah, damage to his car, which I never believe, by the way. Everybody has a bit of damage at the end of the race. Whenever they're coming out and saying there's damage, unless it was severe damage, it's basically an excuse on behalf of the driver. So I basically ignored that. Not a good first race, even factoring the damage, whatever. This race, we weren't aware of any damage, and just no pace. Really bad. I'm hoping he can get to grips with the car. We will see on Ricciardo. Next up for my dishonourable mentions, I've actually put Gasly. I think the issue is Gasly should have had 2 really solid points paying positions this season. He's had great pace, he's had a great car. He qualified up in, was it 5th in the end? Somewhere around there. Really good qualifying, really good pace. And then just, started on the wets, which, was probably a joint decision between him and the team. Clearly a bad choice in the end. They took the risk, whatever, that is what it is. But then they hung on to them for 19 laps or something stupid. Far too long. Until Ocon had pitted and then caught him back up. They held on to it that long. It seems stupid. And And then, had a reasonable recovery after that, to be fair to him. I think, did he get a couple of points? He did. He got 8th place in the end, so he got a couple of points in the end. So a good recovery considering, but it's still just not good enough. And I think, didn't he make a mistake at one point? I felt like he was through the gravel or something. Do you recall, Rwaggy?
Yeah, he ran off at the second to last. But also to mention, I was about to bring this up at the end, but Gasly's actually been gained another position. So Ravenduck, my spy, has actually told me that Lance Stroll has been given a post-race 5-second penalty, which has now lost him a position.
Well, let's see. If I refresh this page...
up to P7.
No, F1 hasn't updated their results yet. But okay.
He got given 7:44 their time, so literally about, 5 minutes ago.
Okay, so he will get another position. But again, to me, it's not good enough because we've... I guess it's almost unfair. We've come to expect such high things of him, and he's shown such insane potential, and he's not a rookie by any means, so he should be doing better. I want him to do better, and that's why he's in my dishonourable. Arguably harsh, but it is what it is. And then I've put Mazepin, as we call him on this stream. I put several spins throughout practice and qualifying. He had an incident with Latifi at the beginning of the race. I did put arguably not his fault, though. Because potentially should have been given room, but also potentially could have backed out earlier. Who knows? Whatever, is what it is. So that one's potentially a plus for him. We mentioned this earlier, but I put Schumacher had a mistake, but still beat Mazepin by over a minute, because he seemed to spin multiple times unsighted throughout the race. Even the team boss came out and said over this weekend he's overdriving, he's trying too hard, which hopefully is true, because if it's that simple, he just needs to chill out a bit and he'll be all right. But at the moment, he just can't. Let's be honest, he can't control that car.
Yeah.
It is a bad car. There's not really any doubt about that. It is a bad car. Schumacher's also been struggling, but Schumacher has been struggling quite a lot less. So Mazepin, I suspect, will be in my dishonourable mentions for a few races to come yet, but maybe I'll be proved wrong on that one. My final dishonourable mention goes to Fernando Alonso, actually. Because, it's only his second race back. Bit of a leeway given, but these are the sort of conditions that Alonso should have been scoring points in. To me, it's wet, wet to dry. It's interesting conditions. There's a few safety cars in there. That's a sort of race, despite the fact he's quite new back to Formula One. That's the sort of race I expect a 2-time champion in Fernando Alonso to be excelling in. And just didn't. He just didn't excel in any way. It wasn't a bad race, but got beaten by his teammate. Couldn't get past his teammate. He was only half a second back or so at the line, and just didn't really do much in the race. And to me, Alpine signed Alonso to excel in those sort of races, and there was no spark. So let's hopefully he can find his spark. Again, he is still new, but to me, honestly, he should have done better. And I put there, is he past it, or does he just need more time? That one is obviously yet to come. It's more of a rhetorical, that one. But yes, that concludes my dishonourable mentions. Rwaggy, is there any additions that you want to
add? Well, I want to touch on Ricardo real quickly, because I agree with what Built 2JZ Lexus has put in the chat. I think Ricardo does deserve a bit of a get out of jail free, in the same vein as you have for Sainz, because it is technically his second race in the car, and it's not that I would say they're about the same when it comes to experience. So I think, I would say the Sainz definitely performed better than Ricardo.
I think it was the size of the whooping, is that he's doing worse than Perez is.
I'll give you that. I would also agree, though, that his pace was pretty poor, to say the least. So, Lando being there through was the right decision, 100%, and I'm glad that he didn't argue it at all. Gasly's game positions, Mazepin, I think, will be in there, like you said, for a very long time. Alonso, agreed. The conditions that were there today prey on all of those that have got the experience, and they will immediately be able to excel, right? Like you said, and he didn't. So I think that's another thing. And also, one other slight, this is a new thing as well from the stewards. So Kimi Räikkönen actually gets a very large penalty, a 30-second time penalty, because he failed to enter the pit lane for the restart. And that was actually given about 15 minutes ago. So he's literally, it's fresh off the press. So that 30 seconds will actually put him, I believe, outside of points altogether.
And gives Alonso a point.
Wipe the way down. Yeah. So sad for him. But that kind of shows, he's somebody who's got no excuse, effectively. He should know exactly what's going on most of the time. He's got his race engineer in his ear telling him what to do. He's got all the experience in the world. I think he's now the most experienced driver, I believe, of anybody else that's ever been in F1. I could be wrong. So I expect that he's good.
To be fair, I'm not necessarily putting that one on his door. His engineer could have told him, "Hey, stay out on track, don't go in the pits." Like, and then he's obviously not going to be like, "Oh no, I'm going to go into the pits," because everyone else is. He arguably could do that, but he's probably just going to follow what his engineer says. So we don't. I'm not going to blame him for that one, but yeah, that is that is a pretty harsh penalty, which pushes him outside the points. So yeah, shame F1 hasn't updated at least the Stroll penalty, if that was 45 minutes ago. But anyway, it is what it is. Anyway, guys, that rounds out this stream. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. This is a bit longer than normal. We stretch this one to an hour and a half, but normally we try and stick them to an hour. We do this, well, at least I will be doing this. Hopefully Rwaggy can join me at future races. I will
Of course.
I will ask him his permission if he could join the next one. But yes, we do these about an hour after the race. Every F1 race, we just have a kind of talking points, almost like a live podcast where we can get your guys' thoughts as well. So do certainly join us for the next one, which will be in about 2 weeks' time, I believe. I'm going to get up again my own website.
Next week, isn't it?
It's 2 weeks' time, I believe. 13 days.
Of May. Yeah, you're right.
13 days, 19 hours, 27 minutes, and 8 seconds. We'll have the Portuguese Grand Prix starting at 3 p.m. UK time as well. So, guys, hopefully you can join us for that one. Again, we'll do that about an hour or so after the stream. But anyway, guys, thank you for joining this one. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for all your votes. It's always much appreciated as always, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.